welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you could join us here for our Young Producer Panel. This is part of the Specialty Crop Conference. This was part of our original schedule. We were supposed to do this back in November and then everything fell apart. But now we're back. I'm so glad that you could join us. So we've asked 3 young producers here to tell their story. I'm going to give them each 5 to 10 minutes to introduce themselves, talk about their farms, and then I'll follow up with some questions, and then we'll take questions from the group as well. So I'm so glad that you could join us. So I'm going to start off. David is going to start us off. He has a slideshow with pictures. David Jurena, and then we have Lainey Johnson, and then we have Riley Renke. And they're all going to introduce themselves first. I'm going to call David up. I have your pictures just going in order. I don't know if you want me to stop or...
It's all good.
Okay. So you can introduce you can stand up, you can do whatever.
Okay, well, I'm Dave Jurena from Crete, Nebraska. And these are some of the things that I do. Those are my logs. My big thing is mushroom growing. So this is the logs I've recently cut this year, so plus more. That's my inoculation tool. I grow a whole bunch of stuff, fruits, not a lot of vegetables. I know this is a little vegetable thing here.
It's a specialty crop.
Okay, well, that is a specialty crop for sure. So that's me soaking my mushroom logs. That's how I fruit them out there after they've had the mycelium run through them. There's 3 oyster mushrooms, a grade of a summer white and a olive, some shiitake mushrooms. I try to do some companion plants, so there's aronia berries, and they shade for my shiitakes there. Those are shiitakes being dried in the sun so that they soak up all the vitamin D from the sun, and then you get that in the wintertime when you don't get a lot of vitamin D. There's morel mushrooms, and there's a morel mushroom pasta that I make. That's the best part of it, bringing the stuff in the middle of the day and just like throwing it in a pan, and that's my favorite thing. There's my farmer's market stand. It's pretty basic, but it's to the point. There's my nephew helping me out. So, it's really a lot about the kids. And there's Maggie's daughter, Juniper, and I thought that was a good picture at the Saturday market. But, my bees, they're kind of bearding out right there, so they probably need some more room, or it's hot or something. Tapping maple trees for sap. Some fruits. That's kind of where I started, was in the fruit part of it with viticulture and enology. Some cherries and whatnot, but apples. So elderberries. There's a lot of stuff there. Vineyard. I take care of a 1-acre vineyard in Elkhorn, Nebraska. So hazelnuts. Not all of this is stuff that I take to the market, but it's all takes up part of my day. Some cherry tomatoes, some asparagus. The pond, I have fish. And then if they pass for whatever reason, then they go to fertilizer for my plants. Along with that white stuff in there was and worm is good, obviously. I grow garlic. There's me hanging the garlic, but the powdery stuff you saw on the roots of the plants, I put mycorrhizal fungi on the roots to help the plants deal with, whether there's a drought or whatever else. It helps a lot. There's my quail coop. There's quail eggs. The quail coop's not finished, so the quail need to come out of the garage and into the coop. But that's indoor production of mushrooms. I don't do that because outdoors a little bit higher grade mushroom, and it's just working really well for me. I get logs from all sorts of places, farmers, the city. People really don't want Chinese homes or whatever, and so it works good for both parties. But that's about it.
Anything you want to add, since that was like fast?
Oh, well, I didn't want to, there's 2 others here, so. No, mushroom production is my big thing. It's what I'm the most passionate about. So hopefully you guys are interested in that.
Well, thank you, David. So next we'll have Lainey. She'll introduce herself. She has a few slides here.
So I'm Lainey. I own and operate Bright Hope Family Farm in Firth, Nebraska, which is south of Lincoln. If you're not familiar, it's a little village. And we do have an acre in production of produce and cut flowers. So that's what we do. Let me go to the next slide. So yeah, the mission of our farm, we're always working to produce our produce and cut flowers with ecological integrity, using no-till farming practices. That's kind of the base of our farm is no-till. And we work really hard to improve our soil and environment. And we're always thinking about farming for future generations when we're doing all the things that we do. So yeah. And that's a picture of the veg side of our farm last spring. So.
You grow that rainbow?
every spring there's a double rainbow, at least once, and then it's spring. That's just what it happens. Yeah, so my big passion has always been connecting soil health to plant health and how that makes a high quality product. So produce that lasts longer, bigger blooms, more yield. That's kind of where my passion is at. And always trying to grow produce that's really nutrient dense and have soil that's full of life. That's the goal of our farm. So when we started the farm about 5 years ago, I enrolled in the Market Gardener Masterclass to kind of get my foot in the door. My education is not in farming, so I went that direction to kind of learn more. I've always gardened, but this is a whole different world. And then I also received a scholarship to the Moses Conference, which is the Midwest Organic Sustainable Agriculture Service. Did I get that right? Anyway, it's in Wisconsin, and after leaving that, I got really motivated and inspired just to really go full force with the farm. The other thing that happened after going to that conference was there's lots of women's groups that were in Wisconsin, and I thought that was really great, benefited from a lot of the talks that I went to, and wanted to bring that to Nebraska. So when I got back, I talked to some of my female farming friends and said, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? And they were, so we kind of started up that. And so that's been great. It's just a group of women, we support each other. We do, right now we're working on becoming an official nonprofit, but we also do farm tours and work days and things like that. So back to the farm. I'm the primary farmer, kind of handling the day-to-day operations, and then my husband, Andy, kind of likes to be behind the scenes guy, and he handles a lot of the large laborious projects. And then our two kids are always hanging around trying to help. So it's great to see them grow up on the farm as well. I think there's one more slide. So yeah, just a little bit about what we grow. We grow produce, cut flowers, and then also cover crops. So I've kind of touched on that a little bit. But yeah, cover crops, big part of our farm as well. They're not a cash crop. They're just there to improve the soil, and that's been really great to see the benefits from that. Yeah, that's what we grow. And here's my contact information. If after the talk anyone has questions, feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you, Lainey.
Mm-hmm.
Now we'll have Riley.
I was a bit of a last minute addition, so I do not have a fancy PowerPoint like the others. So
Panel on Thursday. So it's
yeah, I've got some notes scribbled, but I'm not quite sure how we can get that up there. So I'm Riley. I operate Broken Arrow Farm and also farm some of my family's ground. Broken Arrow Farm is about 3/4 of an acre of diversified vegetables. And then this past year, we also did about 1/4 acre of sweet corn, and I look to expand that more this year. That is not certified organic, but we use kind of the organic methods, and we do cover crops with that. Most of it's outdoor production. I had a high tunnel which got blown away 2 months ago. So this year will be basically all outdoor production. The farm that I do on my family's ground, it's certified organic for the most part. We do have 2 fields this year that will just be a non-GMO but conventionally raised. And on that, we raise like food grade milo, soybeans, hay crops. Again, we use cover crops on there. And I guess I just kind of had a quick introduction. I didn't know we had so much time. So on the vegetables, we raise about 30 different crops. Primarily, I like to do the root crops. Unfortunately, my favorite crops to grow are the ones that are the least profitable, like green beans and sweet corn, peas. But we do grow a few salad greens. I have some chickens, usually keep between 50 and 75 of them. And for the last several years, I've had a couple beehives, but that's more of just a hobby at this point. I don't really have time to manage them as I should, so I pull a little honey and just hope that they make it through winter so I have more honey the next year. That's all I've got.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to begin the interrogation, and then it'll be your turn as well if you have additional questions. So my first question is, what inspired you to start farming?
Is there a method that we want to
Just
go in order?
whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I guess I'll go since I asked. Yeah, so it started when I was growing up. My mom had a small greenhouse and garden. We lived in town, and I would reluctantly help her with it, being an annoying teenager, acting like I didn't enjoy it, but I really loved it. And that's kind of where the farming bug started. And then I always had a garden, after I left home. And my husband and I lived in Colorado for about 10 years. And while we were there, we had two kids. And I stayed home with the kids. And one day my husband asked me, what are your goals? What do you want to do? And I had these blinders on of, I'm taking care of babies. I don't know what else I'm supposed to be doing. And so, I knew I wanted to farm, but in Colorado, it was very expensive to buy land. Soil was terrible, and there was a lot of competition where we were at. So my husband kind of said, why don't we move back to Nebraska, and we'll have, be closer to family for the kids, and then we'll also be able to get some land to start the farm, and that's what we did. So that was about 5 years ago, and the rest is history. So that's kind of where I started. But
Well, my journey started when I was probably in elementary school. I talked my mom into having a garden because for some reason I wanted one. I'm not sure why, and we lived in town at the time, so we dug up a little spot and had a little garden, and it was not very successful. So, but around the same time, my parents had purchased a farm place just outside of town, so we moved the garden out there. My grandma was, despite being almost 90, was very helpful in getting it started, and I did sweet corn and green beans, and my mom did all the smaller stuff like carrots that looked like grass that I would always pull out when I was weeding. And I just enjoyed gardening. And then after my freshman year of college, I stopped at Tractor Supply and happened to see a book that said, the title was Mini Farming, How to Make a Part-Time Income on a Quarter Acre, I believe. And the person who wrote it was an engineer who, in his free time, made just a nice side income and raised food for his family on a quarter acre lot that they had. And that got me interested in doing vegetable production. And a couple years later, I'd read several more books, read a lot of like Jean-Martin Fortier, who's known as the market gardener, and Curtis Stone, who's the urban farmer, and decided that I was going to try vegetable farming. And then kind of at that, at that same time, my dad had gotten into organic and wanted to do farming, but he doesn't have a background in farming. And I started doing one field of hay organically, and then the grain production went from there.
Okay.
Well, since I was a kid, my dad digging asparagus out of ditches and bringing it home and replanting it, and then some fruit trees and stuff like that. And then ventured off and got a viticulture degree, and so that's kind of fruit. And then a friend and I, he had the same degree, so we had a little competition on who could do it better. So we just both started planting stuff like crazy. Then my parents fell ill, and so I was there taking care of them, and it worked out good that I was able to kind of go outside and do that stuff and come back in and hang out with them. And eventually I ended up in culinary school, where I realized I wasn't too great at, making stuff so quickly. I'd like to slow cook a little bit better, but I realized I'm a better farmer, so I went back to that. And but with the culinary and with living in California and experiencing good food, I kind of got a mindset of like what chefs are looking for. So every time I was planting something, I always had in mind like what would be a unique product that a chef would want. So that's where I went with. Well, I guess I also, through culinary school, I ended up going to Milwaukee to work on an urban farm and aquaponics. And right when I got there, a guy said, "No, you want to get into mushrooms." So I did. And not those. Anyway, so I started growing mushrooms. I did indoors and outdoor mushrooms on logs. Just seemed to be more where it was at. And then I just through Googling and finding, one search takes you to another, and so you just find more unique products. And so then there was the quail and the quail eggs and all the other. I'm planning on doing like edamame in the future and wheat lahocha, corn smut in the future, stuff like that. So.
So you're sort of like the farming renaissance now?
I guess you could say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, when I'm at market, there's definitely, people come looking for, because it's something not everybody has.
You have corn smut?
Are you looking for some? No.
I'm an agronomist. I can get it for you. How much do you need?
We'll talk. Yeah.
I can get it conventional, or I can get it organic.
I am organic, yeah, for sure. I'm not certified or anything, but everything I do.
You're one of the first people that I've heard say, "I know what that is, and I have an idea how to prepare it, and I love it. I think it's better than Morels."
Yeah, Maggie will tell you something, but yeah, and I've never had it, but I have people that want it already, so.
Oh, yeah.
I think it falls right in with what I'm doing with the fungus type stuff, so.
We will work together.
Gotcha.
That's great.
So David, you were talking about, you're finding those niches that, you can sell to chefs or people, like unusual things. Lainey and Riley, how did you decide what you wanted to grow?
Sure. So first year I wanted to grow everything.
Right.
You get the seed packet or the seed catalogs, and you want to grow everything in them. So that was actually a mistake the first year, is not narrowing in on certain things. So with the veg, all of our beds, we have to do a permanent bed system, and all the beds are 30 inches wide and 100 feet long. So it's very easy to calculate how much each bed is making. And we've kind of got a cutoff, and I have to be a little bit harsh with that and just cut things if they don't hit a certain limit for us. So, because as much as I love growing, it's also a business, and I have to support our family. So that's kind of how we do it. And also just adding more, we've added quite a bit more flowers, partially because they're fun to grow, but also they make more money per square foot. So that's how we figure it out. Yeah.
Well, Riley, you sort of hinted earlier that you're the opposite.
Yeah, I like growing more than marketing. So I like the stuff that people see it and they just buy it. Although I really do like growing the weird stuff, like that's really interesting. And if he's got a place to get corn smut, I would love to have some. Yeah, so I started out during my first season. I took Curtis Stone's urban farming course, which is supposed to teach you how to be an urban farmer, which is funny since I'm in rural Nebraska. But he talked about microgreens, growing all these different salad greens. I'd read Elliot Coleman's books. He's up in Maine, and he grows all these weird greens, winter greens. I thought, oh, that'd be fun to do. But then I realized it's very difficult to grow a wide variety of greens in Nebraska, and I also don't enjoy growing them as much as I do, carrots and beans and beets, crops like that. So I do have spreadsheets set up that show profit and loss per bed, because I use a similar size permanent bed as what Lainey does. And I do cut the least profitable crops, but I try and keep even marginally profitable ones if they're ones that people like to buy. And the sweet corn, I should say that I am trying to do more on a row crop scale with equipment, not just small scale produce by hand, because on that scale it's not worth it.
So I think it's interesting, like the three like totally different approaches to how do you grow what you grow. So I'm going to transition now into, Lainey, you shared that you have a farm mission. So you can expand a little further on that,
Sure.
or share like your other goals or your vision for the farm. But do you have, for all of you, do you have like a vision, a mission, or goals for your farm that you sort of think about often when you're planning and doing things?
Sure. So a couple years ago, I was told that every business needs a mission statement. So mine is to cultivate human and environmental health through regenerative farming. And what we mean by that is that however healthy our soils are, that translates into crop health, and eventually that translates into human health. So I focus a lot on making sure that the soil is very healthy. We do that through cover crops, soil testing, plant sap testing, and just trying to have a real high quality crop, focus on quality more than quantity.
Well, I guess I'll go. I daydream a lot, so yeah, I'm constantly thinking about that stuff, while I'm talking to my plants. But yeah, some of this, I do cover crops too. In fact, you can walk through my yard and pull a carrot out of the ground, and it's not there to harvest or anything. It's just there to break up the soil. But some of the things I want to do in the future, I have some buildings there, and one of them I'd like to renovate and make into a commercial kitchen so that other farmers have a place to make like a value-added product, as well as myself, and then maybe get some indoor mushrooms going. But right now the outdoors working really well for me. But that option is there with the bigger building. I'd like to buy my neighbor's property, because although I utilize my space quite well, because that's kind of what I learned on the urban farm in Milwaukee, I need more space because there's more things that I want to do. And I want to leave that, kind of an open slate for the next generation. I want, to be available for them, but like whether it's my nieces or nephews or whoever, I want to leave that for them so that they can, because, and listen to the kids. Once I start getting older and, they start having ideas, okay, well, yeah, we can try that out. Yeah.
Okay, Lainey?
Sure, so I guess I touched on it a bit when I introduced myself, but yeah, the mission is always soil health for us. So when we started the farm, the other thing I did was I kept some of the soil from when we first broke ground, and it was thick, hard, heavy clay, and I remember it was about 2 years into farming, the first time I was able to like put my hands in the soil and get loose, loamy soil, and that was really, really cool for me. I don't know if that'd be cool for other people, but it was a really cool moment, and just seeing that transformation and how that has improved our yield and improved plant health and just made things easier. And if there's anything that you can do to make farming easier, I think that's a good thing. So that's our mission, is always, like Riley's talking about as well, is soil health. Yeah, we like farming, and the crops are kind of a byproduct of what we do underneath the ground. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that's interesting to hear. Like, I think we picked them perfectly. Like, they all have like different approaches, but all very similar as well.
I care about my soil health too.
I'm sure you do. Yes.
Okay. I was going to wonder.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Like, you can. I mean, I teach hydroponics, so I do farming without soil too, so it's all good. So, has there ever been a moment where you like sat back and realized like, hey, this is like a successful farm, or like you've actually sat back and said, hey, I'm actually a farmer, right? Have you had that moment, and when was it?
Well, Dave and I were kind of chatting about this at breakfast, and a little bit scared to say it out loud, because every time you think something's going great in the field, you get humbled, or most of the time by weather or pests or something. But one thing that's kind of this year been a big marker of that is, so we have a landscaping business, and that is what has basically funded the farm. And each year my husband does less landscaping and more farming, and this year he's going to be farming full time. So the farm will be our main income, which is really cool, and the landscaping will be there if we need it, but that's it. So that's a big success for us.
For me, I don't think that there's one moment. It's just little moments. So if we have a healthier looking crop than ever, you know, that's a little success moment. Getting compliments at the farmer's market at how good produce tasted or how high the quality was. Occasionally people just say, you know, keep the change, we value what you do, little moments like that. And then going back to the soil health, just seeing the soil change over time. Where I grow my produce, it was just conventional corn and beans for years, so it was horrible to begin with. And I mean, now I'm to the point where when I harvest garlic, almost every bulb that I pull out, there's an earthworm or two on it. So it just shows that we're moving in the right direction, and it's more of progression rather than trying to attain some certain goal.
Yeah, and I guess I'm talking on the way up here that it was really this year that I've realized that I've been doing mushrooms for 10 plus years, and it was this year that with the nice weather, I've been able to go out and cut a lot of logs. So production should be going up here pretty soon, and with my experience, I know that all of my mycelium will run through them just fine, and they'll produce. I know how much they'll produce. So I'm pretty confident that I'll have something going here in the fall, a little bit bigger, and then 2023 is going to be a pretty big breakout year for me.
Well, thanks for sharing all those stories. So now, as a younger person, you often get advice from older folks, let's say older farmers, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say, what would be like a piece of advice that you wish someone had told you when you started or before you started?
I wish they would have told me to do it, because that it's fun, that you get to hang out with people that, like these kind of people, and have a good time, because, obviously there's things that you got to, costs, and like you're not going to make a profit right away and all that stuff, but like, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say I wish someone had told me how many mistakes I was going to make, and that's okay. Like I've learned more from my mistakes than anything else, and so I think that's what I would tell my beginning self, is that there's going to be a whole bunch of messes, and that's okay. There's always next year with farming. There's always ways to improve. So.
All right, this one I had a few notes for.
Okay.
One of them relates to what I was saying about there's not an end goal, and that would be enjoy the process. It's not just about harvesting that perfect carrot or lettuce crop. You have to enjoy the journey with it, whether that's good, seeing the double rainbow every spring, or, dealing with aphids eating your crop. You have to learn to enjoy all that and the learning experiences. And along with that, look for the opportunity in every problem rather than the problem in every opportunity. And that one is for me as much as anybody else. Remember your context. That's something that early on I didn't do very well, because I learned from, Curtis, from these people that are in real urban environments, or even Jean-Martin Fortier, he's up in Canada where it doesn't get as hot. They have a lot of good advice and knowledge, but you have to make it specific to your farm. So no matter who you get your advice from, you have to remember where they at, what principles can you pull from them, and also keep good records early on. The first couple years, I didn't do that, and once I started doing it, it helped a lot. Just little things like if you're doing vegetables and you have standardized planting beds, keep track of how much seed you use. I just use a little scale and make sure it takes this many ounces for this bed. Do that a few times, and you've got the records. So when you're ordering seed, you know how much to order, and then you can, in the future, when you go plant, you can weigh the seed before and after to make sure everything planted properly. Harvest records too, so you know how much to plant. sales records at markets so you can tell whether or not they're profitable, just records in general.
I would like to add that it really is a great life. You're constantly exercising, you're eating good food, freeing your mind. And then you do put the love into it, and the profit will come with it eventually.
Another thing I'd like to add to kind of piggyback on some of Riley's is there's no end. So, oops, I lost my mic thing. So just know that there's no end, so just keep going. And that can also help too to be able to take a break in the crazy busy season. When you're really tired, it's still going to be there. So it's okay to, if it helps to be able to take a break too. So just know it's not an end in farming, you're never done, but that's a good thing too.
I think that's really important, taking breaks. It's hard, but you need it occasionally.
I think last summer was the first time in the busy season that I would take a day off. And that helped a ton and made me more productive later on, because in the previous years I would just work 7 days a week for 6 months or whatever and then collapse. So yeah, that's something to add to that.
Well, now it's your turn. Do we have any questions? So we have Mr. Cornsmut in the back.
I'll start with corn smut. Anybody who wants it, I can teach you how to inoculate if you have some sweet corn in particular. Field corn will do it, but sweet corn's got a different flavor. Okay, I think it has, by the variety of corn, you can change the flavor a little bit. There's actually 3 periods of time that it will grow. And I'm going to tell you the base, the ear, and the top. And they are, basically you want to harvest when they're young and small and white. If it's all black, I tend to pass those by. So that's smut. I have a plant pathologist over in Iowa that 15 years ago we said, hey, this is a market, but we couldn't find any way to harvest and ship it to Mexico because that's where it was demanded, or high-end restaurants. So with you having local sources now, that can be developed. I'm glad to show you how to do it. It's not that hard, but it's a timing thing. You, young lady, are brilliant. For one reason, you saved some soil and said it's rock hard. And you now understand one measure, which is to touch the soil. I'm 4 decades an agronomist, 2 decades as an organic agronomist. I work with vegetable producers and row crop, which is where most of my acres are. I've either made or helped make or seen every frickin' mistake that can be done. And yes, that's where you learn the most. So always start with something new on a small piece, see how it worked, and then expand if and when you decide that that's the direction. I commend you in the mushrooms. I just think that you're a wave of the future because we know that they are healthy and that they're good for us.
We'll do a little trading, a little horse trading.
We can do some of that. Your location is where?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm in Crete.
You're in Crete, you're in
Firth.
Firth, and you are?
Beatrice area.
Right, okay. I think it's great that you're down in this, I'm going to call it the southeast part of the state, but we need some of that up in the central and the north part of the state also. So I mean, you 3 have made me feel, who've been in the field for many, many years, that there's a future for healthy food. I know a lot of people my age who have died because they got exposed to the damn chemicals, or they're facing huge medical issues, and very few of them are as healthy as I am. And I'm in my 70s. Okay? You are the future. We are what we eat, and the soil is what provides us with what we eat. So I commend all 3 of you as being leaders. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you grow corn smut on popcorn?
Yes? Oh, it's really good on popcorn.
Because we like the popcorn because we harvest it for baby corn. And like little canned stuff will be 1,000,000 times better. And we did have a little bit of corn smut last year. I didn't know if that was really a viable choice for that.
Well, it's a case of how vigorous is the plant. And if we inoculate it properly, you'll get production. Now, you won't get 100 smuts on 100 plants. You're gonna get one on maybe 30 to 50 plants. And so you have to inoculate it. Timing-wise is important, and I'll teach you that. It's simple.
Next year for the conference plan, to make a note, we need a corn
Yeah, I
smut
think we need to
talk.
Right.
That'd be really
talk on
interesting.
it. For
Realized
sure.
we want to have like a smut peddler.
Oh!
There you go.
But you can also, I mean, I prefer to eat it fresh, okay? But I have frozen, and then, you know, I bring it out, slice it, and do what I'm gonna do with it. But you don't wanna freeze it, bring it out, and let it go mushy, because it ain't pretty. So, yeah, there's ways to preserve it later into the winter. We still got a few bags at home.
Any other questions for our group up here? We have the experts, the future leaders of farming. Now's your chance.
I walked in late, so maybe you already addressed this, but what are you guys' fertility practices, like, just briefly? I mean,
Sure.
besides cover crops and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'll start. So that's my favorite area to talk about. So I do a complete soil test. It's got everything from your NP and K down to like molybdenum, all your micronutrients on it. And then I do some fertility based off of that. I have started doing I've done a couple Haney soil analysis, which measure more your microbial activity and balance. And I'm using those more as a kind of a report card. Like my soil health score is, let's say 22 or whatever. Next year when I take it, is it better or worse? Am I moving in the right direction? And on that test, it's important to do it at the same time of the year because the biological activity changes with soil temperature and the seasons. Well, yeah. And then the last couple of years too, I've done sap analysis testing on my largest earning crops. So on the row crops, I've done it, and then since I'm doing a bigger patch of sweet corn, I've done it. And that's where you take leaf samples, and I ship over to a lab in the Netherlands. And then it comes back, and it's basically like a blood analysis for plants. And then I can correct based off that. On a small scale, diversified, that doesn't work because it's hard to spray 30 different, little individual beds. And then as far as fertility inputs, I do all organic, all organic ones. I like rock phosphate, pelleted poultry manure are a couple of my favorites. And then, it's mainly rock powders. The micronutrients, some synthetics are allowed in organic, and I use those if a specific deficiency is there.
Okay, I can talk a little bit about ours. So each year we have to add in less and less fertility with the soil improving. So I guess maybe I'll start with kind of our bed prep process, which is relatively simple. But so we till once when we prepare the beds, and then we don't till ever again. And once the beds are made, if there is an amendment that's
You mean
needed.
till once each season, or?
No, once.
When you prep it for the
Yep.
first time?
Yep. And then, and if we had a different type of soil, you may be able to get away with never having to till, but with the lovely thick clay soil that we have, it needs broken up at least once. And a lot of times too, we'll put a silage tarp, if you're not familiar with that, just a big black tarp. We'll put that on the area for 2 weeks to 2 months, and that just kind of breaks up the brome and can kill some weed seeds and make the soil a little bit looser too. And then, so if it's already there, I broad fork it, which is just a big garden fork, and then put down any amendments that are needed. Most of the time with the veg, because we do a soil test as well, and like we're really high in phosphorus, so I don't want to add anything with phosphorus in it. So most of the time I'm just adding some feather meal for the veg, and then I put a layer of compost on top of that, and then we plant directly into that.
And
So
where do you source your compost?
oh, that's a good question. So right now, so we were using big red worms, and if anyone has been able to get a hold of Jeremiah, let me know, because we were using his vermicompost, which is really great. We started using Soil Dynamics in Ashland, which was great as well. It's quite a bit more expensive, and we have to go on I-80 with a trailer. It's just not ideal as far as the system-wise goes. So I don't have a great answer for that. For this year, we're working through trying to source that.
I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah, because we make some on the
Especially
farm.
because like soil dynamics, it's not certified, so if
Yeah.
you wanted to go for certification, it's
Does
not an
anybody
option.
have certified?
I don't think so,
So
because I've called them a couple times.
yeah, so that's a hurdle for sure. Because we make some on the farm, but it's definitely not enough to for our process.
Right,
So.
right.
So yeah, so our main focus with fertility is just soil health and then letting the microbes do their thing and get access to the nutrients for the plants. So increasing airflow in the soil, reducing compaction can help with all of that, getting organic matter in the soil. All those things work together to kind of help the microbes do their thing. And then each year we add less and less fertility.
You've really touched on the answer to this question. We maybe need to clarify it.
Sure.
You used the word rotation. You started out an analysis of where you are, and then as you rotate with different crops, you're going to build certain nutrients in there. Occasionally, you may have to add a little something,
Yes.
but basically rotation, and then whenever you can get outside, I'm going to pick the word nitrogen, or whatever else you might be short, you supplement that in. But I think the key word, having worked with a lot of organic people, is you've got to rotate. And that's not 3, that's more like 4, 5, or 6, and cover crop is at least 1, if not 2.
Right.
So that's the key, is figuring out that rotation, and that's one of the discussions I have with organic guys in 8 or 10 states when we're talking about starting or enhancing. One other thing, this device in my hand is critical to your success. Being able to be in the field and put it on dictation and write the note down when you see the problem right there. Oh, I'll go back and write it down. No. I'm a professional note taker and I wrote them for decades. This device, being able to dictate in, and it comes back out pretty clear. It helps you specifically identify pluses and minuses. And by the way, you can throw a picture in there with it. So having a phone or a device that you can do that while you're in the field, I think is a huge partner. It's there as you need that partner.
On his point, I think the cover crops are a good way to get that diversity in the rotation, because you can put 15 or 20 species in there, and then on your scale, if you wanted to silage tarp it, you can mow it off and do that.
Cover crops are a great tool for sure.
When you do tillage initially, what are you just using a rototiller, or are you, okay?
Yep. So the other thing we're looking forward to for this year, if we're looking towards more Korean natural farming, if anyone's familiar with that, but it's basically using what you have on your property and creating different concoctions and using that, a lot of foliar sprays, things like that to improve your fertility and your plants. So that's moving forward, we're going more towards that direction. Still learning a lot on that, so I don't have a lot of knowledge right now on that whole process, but that's what we're moving forward doing.
And I'm not a vegetable farmer, so so I don't do any testing outside from in the vineyard. But I do use a lot of cover crops. So like, gosh, there's maybe 4 different kinds of clover out there. There's vetch, fescue, all sorts of stuff like that. For my fruits. I do foliar sprays, fish, sea kelp, algae, boron, zinc.
Neem?
Let's say what?
Neem?
Neem, I do, like a dormant spray of neem, and then, I've tried using neem and, gosh, everything else, whether it's cayenne pepper or garlic or whatever for Japanese beetles, but they're, that's a whole, that'll make me cry. But so as far as my soil, I do amend it for my garlic. I'll put sand in there to make it a little bit looser. I'll put ashes from my wood burning stove. It's more of a biochar type thing. And then just again, getting your fingers in there, getting it underneath your fingernails, and all. That's kind of how I do it.
Initially, did you add a lot to the vineyard to get it balanced since those
Oh
are
yeah,
perennial?
well it was
or-
an existing
okay.
vineyard,
Okay.
so I ripped all but one row of vines out and replanted, and then we went through there and put some composted manure, there, cover crops, and just all sorts of. It was, and now I would say it's the best vineyard in the state. Maybe it's pretty darn good.
And having the fish and the quail, do they come back into your soil in any way?
Good question, Maggie. Yeah, so the quail droppings, they go back out into into the soil that I'm planning on utilizing this year, planting something out there. And as you saw, the fish were. It would be nice to get the fish water, and I do actually when I clean the pond, that water gets pumped over to trees and stuff. Not in any calculated way really, but and then the dead fish that do happen, they go in there on the roots, and I kind of face them towards the roots as if they're kissing the roots. You got to do weird stuff as a farmer.
Does that help in any way?
I bet it does.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, as far as I don't vegetable farm too much, but I would like to, if we have time, touch base and let you know how to inoculate a log.
Any other questions from our group for our experts up here? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm with Food Bank for the Heartland. The last few years, we've made a big push for more produce. In the last couple of years, we've distributed a little over 2 million pounds of produce. But this year, we are in the market for culturally diverse foods. In our biggest area of need, Omaha, Council Bluffs, that big area, a lot of different cultures that are in need. And we want to try to find more produce and healthier foods that we can bring into the building to get out to those different cultures and those different folks. I would like to talk to anyone actually that may have some different kinds of produce or veggies that we may be able to purchase or work out something. I don't know what it looks like yet, but we have bought a lot of produce. We're planning on buying more produce, but this is why I'm here. I'm here to make some contacts and try to figure out how we can find some of those different types of veggies.
We got all the local farmers markets.
We have not. This is a new push for us. Just something that when the pandemic hit, we just found a lot of different needs. And so we're starting to figure out how we can fill those.
Yeah, I would suggest farmers market.
Yeah, if nothing else, there's so many vendors there that they will know of other producers in the area.
Up there,
Yeah.
up there. And I still at the Casa Bovina, a great restaurant in Lincoln, and they found me at the farmers market, and now they're working out really good for me. They I up my price, and they just up the amount they want. But that's probably I would suggest going to the farmers
We'll
market.
need some big amounts, but some larger amounts because we do 93 counties. We service basically the whole state of Nebraska, but yeah. So if anybody has.
How do you feel about smut? I know a guy.
Well, but let me speak to that. I live in North Bend. 3 churches 6 years ago said, we're not going to take any state or federal, and that kind of it's your group.
Yeah.
And we have, we think that there's 110, 120 people who potentially could go to bed at night hungry in a town of 1,200. And I'm telling you that the last month we're feeding 70 people a week. It's all church donated, or we've been given some money. So like yesterday, my wife and I were in Fremont, and we loaded up the car, and we came home with the front end up because we needed cases of a few things. But we have tremendous networking. I never know when the eggs are coming, but I got 3 or 4 people that say, well, I happen to have 3 extra dozen. The ladies are busy, and they have some clients. So what they said is, go to the farmers markets, and I can give you some additional names of bigger places, and see what's available that they can say, hey, come on over, I've got a few of this, few of that. I like what you're doing. I commend you, and I know that it can be successful, but you're always waiting for the next phone call about where am I going to get kidney beans or whatever it happens to be. So I commend you because you're helping a part of our population that doesn't know how to network yet. I think, that's my perception.
So I think there are a few other tools, so I'll just throw this in. I don't know if our extension person that has the market maker table, they're supposed to be here. We mentioned it in the opening session. If not, you can look it up online. So that's basically an online platform where producers can go and they can share what they're doing, or people can go in, it's like, this is what I'm looking for. So it's like, almost like an online clearinghouse for local production. And so that'll be a resource you can look at. And for producers, if you like want to do online sales but don't want to set up your own platform, I believe we can even set you up with a platform in there. You can also reach out to that man right there, that's Casey Foster. He's with the Department of Agriculture, and he maintains the list of all the farm folks in the state. So there's a special website you can go and look up every farmer that's registered with the Department of Ag and every farmer's market. Any other questions? We have about 7 minutes left. Yes. Oh, and you have Buy Fresh, Buy Local is a good clearinghouse there.
My question was kind of related to this discussion, and just where do you all sell your products? Like, how did you decide where to sell, what markets to sell to? Like, yeah.
Well, farmers markets are great, 'cause you get full retail. You have to take time out of your day and stand there, and it costs to be there, but it's a fun environment. You get to take a break and see your kind of people and stuff. But full retail, but then you know, restaurants or whatever.
Yeah, so we do farmers markets, and we do some on-farm sales as well. And then with the flowers, we have florist accounts, which are nice, and wedding designers that will purchase our flowers as well. So the veg has kind of its separate where it goes, and then the flowers, the market, we take everything, but so that's kind of our main, the farmers markets, and then some wholesale accounts of florists.
It's nice to have a weekend market, and then if you can do like a Wednesday night market, just to have stuff that, you know, so it doesn't spoil in the middle of the week.
Yeah, I do a couple farmers markets, and then up until until the pandemic, I was doing a lot through Lone Tree Foods, and then the pandemic kind of shut down my market there, and I've done a little bit with them since. And the row crops we just sell to kind of your big organic buyers that do food grades. So there's a mill down in Kansas that buys our food grade milo, and a place in Iowa that buys our soybeans for soy oil.
Other questions? We have the 3 future leaders of Nebraska agriculture here. It's your last chance.
Oh no, we're all gonna get their names and addresses.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Watch out, you might find smut.
Okay.
I would appreciate that, actually.
When the pandemic hit, I was surprised at how many people, like, I don't have my stuff out there, but how they found me, you know, I was telling Pete Ricketts' personal chef came down to my house, and people were just coming to my shed, and I just had the scale set up, and we're just doing it like that. But now the farmers markets are back up and going, I think pretty strong. That's kind of the way I'm going.
Well, I think that would be like a good, you know, how has like the pandemic changed what you do?
Well, my
Well-
stuff,
Go ahead. All right, I guess I'll go ahead. Well, for me, I was doing through Lone Tree Foods, which they buy from local farms and sell to restaurants, grocery stores. It kind of ended that at least for the time being, because all the restaurants were shut down. So I tried to focus more on markets and then just kind of local customers, and then the markets were a little hit and miss, but this year they really rebounded, and we had our best year ever at the markets this year.
Yeah, ours didn't change a whole lot. The main change for us was restaurant sales, and that's picking back up again, thankfully. But restaurant sales, you know, were non-existent 2 years ago. But then we would just find ways to maybe have more farm stands or do different things. For a little while, we did delivery, contactless delivery when things were really crazy. So just adapting and.
I feel like when the pandemic hit, people were looking for a more holistic approach to taking care of themselves. So they were looking for good food and like the superfoods and stuff that would
Mhm.
keep them healthy, build up their immune system. So it kind of, yeah.
So I'll end with this. So, you've been farming for like a relatively short period of time compared to other people. And we know that some people, they start out and they want to grow. Sometimes you get to where you want to stay. So what are the next plans? What's the next big project? I know you have you named 15 earlier. But for all of you, what's the next step?
Sure. So we have about an acre in production, and our property is about 4.5 acres. So we're always, each year, we're adding a little bit more, slow and steady, to a manageable rate. So this year we added some. A big goal of ours, hopefully in the next year or two, is to have a greenhouse. We start all of our seeds under lights in in the basement, or Gary grows my tomatoes for me. So that's a goal of ours, to have a greenhouse, and then that would expand to different things that we'd be able to do with that. And we're tripling the flowers this year. That's the big expansion for us. Yeah.
How much time do I have to answer this? I'm always have way too many ideas. So right now, I would say on our row crop fields, it would be getting some more diversity in there, some small grain production. I also really like the idea of no-till with cover crops, like using a roller crimper to help increase soil health, and then also having that mulch there for to keep weeds down and conserve moisture. So I'd like to do some more of that on the vegetables where I can. I'm always wanting to add more crops. I planted a few apple trees a few years ago, and I'd like to plant more of them. It's just, like I said, I like growing more than marketing, and when you get into, I guess apples are pretty common, but like I'd love to grow goji berries and stuff like that. It's just, I'm not sure how practical and how much time I want to spend when I'm already growing over 30 crops. So probably some specialty crops, I'm just not quite sure what yet.
If you're gonna grow apples, grow varieties that aren't typically grown here that will do well. I mean, there's only 300 or 400 varieties that are susceptible or are selectable for here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want somebody to grow a Macintosh or a Rome. I want something else that has a flavor or a bite or a tingle, maybe late season or early season. That's me as a purchaser, and I have 8 or 9 kinds of varieties of apples on my ground. So,
Which ones do you recommend?
You've got to figure out what's going to work in the Beatrice area, because your climate there is dynamically different from North Bend. And so we need to know slopes and all those things, but you can get good stock. One of the extension people can get you good stock, and then you're going to put the right graft on, and then you're going to probably maybe be smart enough to graft in a variety or two to see how they work, because some apples will do really well for you that won't for me, vice versa. But that's a market.
And you'll be fighting with those goji berries because they love to spread.
Yeah, I do. I have had a couple of goji berry plants, and I put them kind of by the produce now. They'll shoot over and stick up 2 beds away, and yeah.
Dave, I know you have several plans. What's your next big project?
Yeah, trying to get that kitchen going, because I think there's a real need for a space for somebody to do a value-added product at an affordable hourly rate, So, and like I said, I want to do that myself. So that, and to butcher my quail and to make pickled quail eggs, and I want to be able to take samples to the market and stuff like that. So that's probably a big thing. But just getting more mushroom production and having that problem of having too many mushrooms, Yeah.
Okay. That's 5 goals. So.
Okay. I don't know.
4 lifetimes, don't you think?
Well, thank you all for joining us. So we are out of time, so I think we're ready for a break. Thank all of you for joining us here today, and we'll let you enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you very much.